Okay guys, welcome back. This is part number 2 of Galaxian. I'm gonna strip this control panel down. We're gonna put all the hardware in the tumbler with all the other hardware that's currently going on. And I'm gonna do the coin door as well because it's kind of rough. So we're gonna strip all this apart, and I am gonna change this control panel overlay. It is ripped up around the joystick, and this corner is kind of missing and stuff. So we're just gonna go ahead and get it taken apart and put it into all the hardware into the tumbler, and then we'll probably soak the buttons in some bleach or simple green or something like that just to clean them up a little bit. Let me go grab a pair of pliers, which I think I might have a pair over here in this cabinet still. Yep. So we'll grab these little needle nose here so we can get those buttons, the nut on the button loose. And then I guess we could do the buttons first. Just take this little needle nose here and spin this nut. Usually doesn't take very much to spin them off. We'll throw the nut in the tumbler, we'll save the button and soak that separately. These ones have clips on them. So we need to get this E-clip off. Tumble that as well. There's our first button. And these should clean up nicely. I want to reuse the original ones. Let's take the E-clip off of this one first. We can take these buttons apart actually. Yep. They use a bigger E-clip than what they normally use. And then there's a washer on here for some reason. I wonder if that's how these were originally. They all look, these two are the same. Now I think somebody did this. Somebody made these work. Okay, I got the washer off. Now we can pull this apart, take this spring and clean that as well. But you can see how nasty that is inside. So we'll get that all soaked and cleaned up. Yeah, somebody did this. They added these washers to take up the space. More nastiness. Okay, got one more. See, because this E-clip's the normal size. So this one, you can get your nut off first and then take the clip off afterwards. See, that's how they're supposed to come apart. And then you just pop this off. Pull this and there's your spring. This one's not as bad as the other two. So those are all off. That's out of the way. Let me get this bracket off. We're going to leave the wiring attached to the joystick. So now we need to take the joystick off, the handle out. There's an E-clip we need to slide out right there. And we can pull out the joystick. We'll clean this up, the shaft and everything. There is a washer which is inside, which might slide out. There it comes. We'll soak this and clean this as well. So now we need to take off these bolts that hold the metal control panel to the wood control panel. Which I believe are 11/32. Yep. We'll get all these cleaned. I think those stay silver on this game. Yes. We'll run them through the glass beads, or the walnut shells rather, and then we will just polish them up with my little buffer. And they'll look just like they did new. I'm not worried about labeling where these buttons go because you can clearly see how they fit in here. Okay, now we have 2 Phillips screws on the metal out here. And this just lifts out. I'm just going to leave it attached to the wood. There's really no point in taking it apart. So we'll just leave that as is. Now we can get this stripped, repainted, and then a new overlay put on it. But I'm going to take measurements of this first, the size of the overlay. So that's going to take that completely apart now. Let me go grab the coin door. We'll take that out real quick. All right. Rip this apart. He does not have coin mechs, but he doesn't use them. It's not a big deal. .5/16. I do have some new ones of these I'll put in there for him. This coin door being redone on that white front panel, that'll look really good. I don't know if that's 5/16 or not. 11/16. 11/32 on this one. This I'll paint separately and put it back in. This is in case you put a button in there. So that's out. We need to get this lock off because we're putting a new lock on there. There's no keys for this one. So this is going to be garbage. Might have to go get a pair of pliers for that nut. Oh, it's loose. Quarter inch. We're almost taken apart here. Okay, we have one zip tie. just break that off. It's a small one. There it goes. Okay, disconnect. So leave that as is. So now this plate, I'm going to see if he wants to get a new one of these plates. I have some plates, but I don't have this style plate. And I'm going to see about maybe I could pop that down a little bit. But I'm going to take this plate off, and we'll see about getting a new plate for it. So I got to grab a little drill bit and take that apart. Okay, I'm going to drill those rivets out now. I just went on Arcade Shop's website real quick and ordered this plate because I forgot. I placed an order last night for a new power supply for the Tapper game down in the basement. So I wanted to get that order in real quick because he hasn't shipped it yet, so I won't have to pay for shipping a second time. Okay, that old plate's off of there. Now, I do have rivets that look almost identical to the original, but I'm not sure how many of those I have left. I might have to use a little bit bigger ones for this one because I know I have some left and I have a couple of my own games I need to finish up. But I do have another brass rivet that looks almost identical, just I think the head's a hair bigger, so I might have to use those ones in this. So, other than that, the coin door is taken apart. I used a 7/64 drill bit to drill those rivets out. But we might have to drill those holes a little bigger. So now I'm gonna go put all this in the tumbler with the other stuff. We'll go back there. It's a mess in the back room right now because I have all the parts for this car that I'm still waiting on some parts so that I can finish putting it together. So I got a ton of boxes around here. So I've had this going for a little while now. So I'm just going to turn it off and add this to it. You can get these on Amazon. I think they're like 50 bucks. And then it's just crushed walnut shells. I'm actually using Desert Blend walnut shells. You can get it at your pet store. Because if you order crushed walnut shells from like Harbor Freight or you go on Amazon or something, they're like $30 a bag. You can go to the pet store for 10 bucks and get yourself a 25-pound bag, which will fill this up like 2 to 3 times. And I reuse it. I don't throw it away after each use because it's still good. There's no point in throwing it away. So I just threw that stuff in there with it, and we're just gonna let it run. I don't use rubbing compound or anything like that in here. I just run straight walnut shells for a couple days and it comes out pretty clean. So we're just gonna go ahead and let this run now for the next couple of days and let those parts get cleaned up. And now we can start doing body work on the cabinet because we've gotten everything taken apart now. So I need to get set up so I can sand down these edges that have the nicks so that we can get some body filler in there. And then this hole right down here where the lock bar went, I'm just going to fill that in with some body filler because there is a metal insert on the back side into the wood, and I don't want to try to beat it out because it's particle board and I don't want to risk cracking the cabinet right there or anything. We're just going to leave that in there and we're going to fill it in with some body filler. Normally I would put a wooden dowel in there and glue it in, but like I said, that sleeve's in there, so I don't want to screw with it. So let me get set up here and then we'll sand down these spots on the sides of the cabinet, and we could get a little bit of body filler on there. Okay, I'm gonna go around with some 80 grit sandpaper here, and I'm just gonna roughen up around the chip area so that I can put some filler in there. There's a big chip down here, right here. Okay, I got all the chip areas stuffed up with some 80 grit sandpaper. And if you guys are wondering, how can you paint laminate and the paint stick to it? I'm using an automotive paint. So once I scuff it up like this, where it's right nice and smooth, and not really smooth, but textured up, it gives it grit to bite. And I'll probably put one coat of an epoxy primer over top of that. The epoxy primer will adhere to this really well, and then I can go ahead and paint over top of it. I've done it many a times and never have had any problems with it. So I got all the main chip areas sanded. All that stuff you see down there is just paint flaking off. It's not actual dents or nicks in the cabinet. So now I'm gonna mix up some body filler. I'm gonna blow this off real quick, and then I'll come back and mix up some body filler. Okay, cabinet's blown off. Let's mix up a little bit of filler to start filling in these nicks. We're gonna use not regular body filler today. We're gonna use this U-Pull stuff. I get it at O'Reilly Auto Parts. It's $20-some a tube. This stuff works awesome. It's a thinner product. It's not as thick as the Bondo brand Bondo. This sands a lot smoother, finishes nicer. So we're gonna mix up some here. Make sure you guys mix up your Bondo, your hardener rather, because it gets liquidy. So you wanna mix it up so that you don't have a bunch of liquid pouring out on you. And then you wanna, worst thing you can do is to stir this stuff. You wanna fold it over. Stirring it just creates air bubbles in your body filler, and then it just leaves little air pinholes in your body work, and then you'll have to go back and fill those in too. Now I don't plan on getting this covered with one coat. We'll probably have to do 2 coats before it's covered, but once we get it all fixed up, we can put it in the spray booth, and we are just going to spot primer it. We are not going to primer the whole cabinet. We're only gonna put filler primer on the areas that I'm using the body filler on. Everywhere else, we're gonna leave it as is because we're gonna use an epoxy primer to use as a sealer to just cover up everywhere else before I put the white paint on. So let's go over here and we will start putting some filler in these nicks. Kind of hard to see on the camera, but we don't want to put a ton on there. We just kind of want to get the heavy part filled in first, and then the second coat will straighten it out. There's a bunch of nicks along the back of this cabinet, probably from being laid down in the truck. So we're just going to kind of let that glob on there and let it overhang like that. These corners, I'll show you, you got to sand these corners by hand. You cannot use the sander I was just using on these corners, because once that thing starts rotating, it just rips this filler right off the corner of the cabinet. So you want to make sure you don't use one of those, and you just use a little block sander and you sand it by hand. So I'm just going to continue to go around the back here. We don't need to make this coat perfect. We're just trying to fill in the big nicks. Okay, go to the other side. We don't have a ton of time either. This stuff likes to set up pretty quickly. Hopefully you can see where I'm at here. The reason why I didn't do that hole in the front yet is because I want this stuff to start getting thicker. As it dries, it hardens up, it starts to get thicker and harder to spread. That's usually a little bit better time to fill in big holes, is when it starts stiffening up. Then it doesn't want to ooze back out of the hole as easily. Okay, that's done. Let's do this one in the front first. I can do the ones in the back afterwards. I'm not as worried about that. So we got this one right here, and we got this little nick up here. And this is not going to fill it in completely on the first coat. Just kind of shove it in there as far as you can. And I have a little bit left. We could probably get most of these holes in the back filled in, but it's starting to dry already. These ones in the back, I never usually use a dowel pin on them. I'm not worried about them. It looks like I mixed up a perfect amount for the first coat. Okay, we're just gonna leave that like that. We're gonna let it set up. We'll come back and sand it down with some 80 grit, and then we can put hopefully one more coat on, and then that'll be done. And then the next step will be making that back panel. Okay, it's first coat set up. I'm taking a block sander here with some 80 grit, and I'm just gonna sand these edges down just to smooth them out. Okay, now we can take the DA sander and sand the flat surfaces. Okay, this side's done. I'm not going to videotape me sanding every spot on the cabinet, but if you look here, you can see how this is nice and flush with this edge, but I don't want to leave it like that. I'm going to put one more coat on that's going to go a little bit farther out, and I'm going to try to feather it out this way, because if you leave this like this, a lot of times you'll end up seeing that when it's painted. So I want to take this edge over top of that seam just to straighten it out a little bit. But if you look down the side of this cabinet now, you can see how much straighter this is right along here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up all the other spots, and then we'll come back and put another coat of filler on. Okay, I just finished sanding the first coat. We're going to mix up a little bit more filler here. Hopefully this will be the last coat. I did find a pretty good scratch on the one side of the cabinet, so I sanded around the scratch so we can fill it in. Get this mixed up here, and we'll get over to the cabinet here. That board I need to make, I might not make it on this video, I might make it on the next one so that I can get primer on this cabinet. But if you look in the center here, there was a scratch coming right down there, and it was kind of deep. So I want to fill that in because the artwork goes over, and I just don't want to see a big scratch underneath the artwork showing through. It's not real deep or anything like that, but it's definitely noticeable. So I just want to fill this in. One coat should do it. You can see how nice this stuff smooths out. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these spots coated again, and then I'll come back. There's really no point in watching me do this again either. Okay, this coat is dry. I'm going to sand that back edge first, and then I'm going to sand these spots here. I'm switching to a 180 grit rather than an 80 grit this time, just so that it's a little bit smoother of a sanding. And hopefully I can kind of feather this out a little bit nicer. Okay, I'm gonna finish sanding the other side and then I'll be back. Okay, it's all sanded down. I found some more bodywork spots on the bottom there and then a couple more gouges on the side there that I touched up. I'm gonna get it in the spray booth now. We're gonna spray primer on the whole front panel and then we're just gonna spot primer all the areas that have the bodywork. So I'll get this in there, I'll get set up and we'll spray some primer. Okay, it's in the spray booth here, I'm warming it up. I just stuck a piece of paper over the service switch and some of the wiring. I just don't want to get primer on it. I'll tape it off better later when I go to paint it. So we gotta get some primer mixed up and we'll spray some primer on here. Okay, I'm gonna mix up some primer here. This is just a 2K primer, urethane primer. It's a 4-to-1 mix, and I'm gonna put a little reducer in there as well. So I want to find my 4-to-1 mark on here. Mix up a little bit. We don't need a ton of it. Just want to put like 2 light coats on the front, and then 2 coats on all the spots around the sides and on the back. Using a fast dry hardener, and we're going to bake this at like 130 degrees so that hopefully later on today or first thing tomorrow morning I'm going to spray it white and black and then we can start putting it right back together. This cabin's been here a couple months, so I just want to get it finished up while I have a couple days of spare time while I'm waiting on parts for the car. Might as well get this done. Then I can work on Wizard of War next. That's going to be the next cabinet I'm going to do. And on that cabinet, I'm going to be putting laminate on the sides. I found an off-white laminate that we're going to cover the sides and the front panel with. So we just need to basically body work that. We don't need to do any primering or painting on the sides or the front because it's going to get covered with the laminate. We'll have to spray any black areas first, but then the sides and everything we just cover right over the bodywork. And I can show you guys how I do the laminating process. And I'm using a vertical grade laminate, which is a much thinner laminate than like what's on this cabinet out here. This is a regular laminate, so it's probably a 1/16 of an inch thick. Vertical grade laminate is 30/2 of an inch thick. So I'm gonna get my mask ready and get out there and get this primer on this cabinet. Okay, all the primer is done. There's a couple little spots I want to touch up before I paint. I got a nick right here that I missed. And one right here. So I'm going to touch up those two right before I paint. But I'm going to let this dry now. Let these fans run for about another 10 minutes, and then I'm going to heat it up and get it dried off. Okay, that's going to end part 2 of the Galaxian restore. The next part will be, we're going to sand it and get it painted, and then after that we can start putting it back together. I'll also have to make a video of the metal parts and the coin door and the control panel, sanding those down and painting those. I usually just use a Krylon spray paint for all those parts. So that's going to end this video, guys. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.